Hey guys, Judy Moore here. I know I've been away from YouTube for a little bit, but I'm very excited to share that my book, my manuscript, is with the copy editor. Yes, I wrote a book on how to socialize a dog with other dogs to prevent reactivity. Should be out by the end of 2025. For today, I was interviewed by Dr. Tett to explain the difference between stubborn versus sensitivity. So the first thing you're going to learn is how to recognize sensitivity. You're going to recognize it both in the passive and the activated dog. I'm also going to teach you how to connect with a sensitive dog because it's not always easy. We know that dogs are sensitive, hard to connect with them. I'm also going to give you ways to change your training based on the dog's sensitivity. So if you have a sound sensitive dog, you should be training a certain way. And I'm also giving you a free gift on stubborn or sensitive, a guide to understanding your dog's true nature. It's a free PDF guide. You'll find the link in the show notes. Don't forget it. If you like this video, give it a like. Thanks.
Hi there, welcome back. Today we're talking with Judy. This is such an important conversation, really trying to understand whether your dog is stubborn or sensitive and thinking about their nature and the role of the dog in the work that you are doing together. Such an important conversation. So you can find out everything about Judy and all of the things that she does down below in her bio and all of her links, and enjoy the interview. Hi, Judy. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hello, Dr. Tess. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, it's lovely to have you. And I am excited for the topic that we're going to be talking about today because I think it's a really important one. I would imagine almost everyone watching, myself included, has had this thought at some point about their dog. And we're going to be thinking specifically about whether a dog is being stubborn or perhaps sensitive. So is that your experience as well? Do you hear that word a lot in your practice when it comes to people and their dogs?
I absolutely do. I hear it every week. My dog is stubborn. I hear that a lot. He's so stubborn. He won't lift his nose off the ground, or he has to check everything out. I do hear that a lot, and I love to be able to explain it to people.
Yeah. And just before we came on camera, we were talking about this a little bit. We got carried away before we even started. And I was kind of saying, I think a lot of this comes from the human side of things, because when we get frustrated and we get a bit wound up that all this hard work that we're doing with our dogs isn't working, or there's problems, I think that's often where we turn to that word, right? Because we think, well, I've done my part, so why aren't you doing your part, dog? You must be stubborn. And that's I think that's where it comes from. Would you agree, or do you see other places that it's originating from?
I agree a lot. And I try to tell people sometimes they have that dog that it really wants to be a working dog and it's very persistent about what is important to it. And they'll remind me, well, he's stubborn. And I said, well, you're using the term stubborn. But when we think about it, if that dog is stubborn because he's smelling things and you want to go walk, expecting him to do your agenda at this moment when there's something amazing right here, is it stubborn, or is it that that dog has a strong preference and it's persistent at doing what it wants to do? And that can be a genetic trait. That's something that we want in a lot of our dogs. We actually want persistence in a lot of dogs. It's not always the easiest trait to have in the companion dog, but I love to explain to people, you're not doing anything wrong. Your dog is persistent about smelling, or your dog is persistent about seeing things that move. And it's sometimes we just have to meet the dog where they are and think about, well, what's going to motivate that dog?
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? And I always think, you know what? Are we not the ones being a little stubborn? Like you say, when we've got our agenda, we're like, no, I want to walk, let's go. You can kind of look at it
Exactly.
from the dog's point of view and they be thinking, who's stubborn here in this situation?
Right. And it's true because we're very much alike. If I'm doing something a lot throughout the week, it's because it's important to me. It's because that is important to me. If your dog is smelling a lot, then that's likely persistent to the dog. It's important to the dog. And we have to realize that some of this persistence, stubborn persistence, it's intrinsically rewarding to that dog. It's what they love. It is so important to the dog. It's intrinsically rewarding. And you mentioned frustration. The dog's frustrated because you're trying to drag him over here, and we're frustrated. But maybe what we're offering is an extrinsic reward. And we have to think about that. what is going to override? And this is a brilliant comment that Suzanne Clother talks about. And if it's really intrinsically rewarding to the dog, we have to think about how to handle that animal and how to use the right motivation, because sometimes the extrinsic reward may not trump chasing the squirrels, right? So
Yeah.
I loved it. I love for people to understand that, because it's not that you're doing anything wrong, but I love what you said. Who's more frustrated, the human or the dog?
Yeah, absolutely. And even thinking about things like someone that's using food rewards with their dogs, super common. I use food rewards with my dogs all the time. And often people will say, I'll ask, oh, what's your dog's favorite treat? And they say, oh, he loves chicken or he loves cheese or whatever it is. And so maybe they've used cheese for every piece of training for the last 4 months. Now, I
Yes.
think, you know what? I don't like cheese, but let's say I do. If I love cheese, it's my favorite food in the world, I'd still be a little bored after 4 months. Sure, I'd still eat it, but I'm not sure if it would trump that intrinsic desire that I have for, I don't know, something else. That's
Yeah,
I can't think of an example, but something else, right?
I,
So that
yeah,
feels important too, like checking in and saying, do you need something different? Is this still important to you?
exactly. Yeah, I think that's good. And bearing it, we think about the border collie or the Sheltie who's standing there watching something across the field, and you're putting cheese in front of his face and it doesn't even register,
Yeah.
right? And so asking what is important to that dog, and being able to figure out what we can use as motivators based on what we know what's important to the dog.
Definitely, definitely. So, where does sensitivity come in here? So, thinking about the difference between a dog that's being stubborn, because I don't know about you, but that word stubborn, it feels negative. It feels like defiant, obstinate, naughty almost, whereas sensitive feels like a dog that's struggling a little bit. So, how do those two kind of terms fit together, or are they different?
I totally agree with you. I think that persistent dog is often off on its own agenda. It's orienting away and it's doing something that's persistent, whether it's following its nose, whether it's staring at something, whether it's rubbing on something because it's has this touch sensitivity and it feels really good. Versus the sensitive dog who has this heightened awareness about something. And I think for most dog owners, they can relate if we talk about the visual awareness or the auditory, that sound sensitive dog, or dogs that are sensitive to touch, right? They're not all dogs like to be touched, but in those sensory, that heightened awareness is exaggerated in these dogs. And that, when we think about it that way, it's like, oh, I took my dog outside this morning, or my foster dog, and he wouldn't pee, he wouldn't go potty, and he was just standing there looking around. When they're heightened sensitivity to whatever that is, and it could be both, it could be both visual and auditory, then we have to look at, okay, is that dog passive in nature, and does it just stand still or sit and pick a paw up or move closer to their handler? Does it become less activated and take less space versus the dog who actually becomes activated? There are those dogs that when they hit that sensitivity, they express it differently and they become more activated, whether it's chaotic walking on a leash, whether it's barking and lunging, whether it's spinning. So I think sometimes people say, oh, my dog's activated and goes at the stimuli. That still can be a sensitivity. We have to realize that it looks different, right, in different types of dogs.
Yeah, absolutely. In the same way that it does in people. If we had a big row right now, a big argument, I could, let's say you shouted at me, I could shout back and be very angry and aggressive, or I could go, I'm really, really sorry, Judy. Sorry, I made you upset, and just turn in on myself. And two different people could respond in those completely different ways, right? And we see the same with our dogs for sure.
That's really true. And I think we have to realize the age of the dog. There are many young adolescents, 6, 7, 8 months. They look like an adult dog, but really they have a very childlike brain still. And they may be in that passive nature, but we can see moments of freezing or moments of forward posture. And we have to be really careful, because that passive sensitive dog could then at 15 months become the activated reactive passive dog. And so it's really important for owners to start to look for these signs early on.
Yeah, definitely. Are there some easy ways that we can kind of spot sensitivity? Because I don't know about you, but I often see a dog struggling in a public setting. It could be at an agility show, it could be in the park, it could be in a cafe, and the person doesn't seem to be aware or even noticing what's going on for their dog. And I'm standing there going, oh God, that dog's really struggling. Are there kind of simple things that we can look out for as dog parents that can suggest the dog struggling a little bit with the environment?
Yeah, and I want people to think about space. Space is a really good indicator. If you have that dog that has space around it, but is sitting on their owner with a paw raised with somewhat of a compressed body, that dog's inability or inhibition to move about is a sensitivity. And oftentimes in your watch, you'll think that dog's still sitting there while it's looking around, but it's compressed and it's not taking space. That would be a sign for me that, oh, that dog is really struggling. And I saw that recently at a dog show, and it was really heartbreaking to see that dog just sitting there and walking by its owner. And then I think for other dogs who have a bit more confident, I look at that chaotic foot pattern. Yes, they're taking space. Now we've got a dog who's taking space with a little bit more confident, but is it smooth and self-assured? Or is it a chaotic foot pattern? Does it look self-assured or does it look frantic? Is it hypervigilant looking around? Are the ears way back, up, way back? So we're looking for quick movements, taking space, but not in a smooth fashion, in a much more chaotic fashion. Because
Mm.
that nervous system, right? That nervous system is not where we'd want it to be.
That's really interesting because I quite often hear about people who are looking for support with loose leash walking. Oh my gosh, my dog pulls like crazy out and about. And actually, when we get to the bottom of it, that's a dog that's struggling in the environment. The leash pulling is the least of the worry. That's almost like cause and effect. That's just the after effects. What's actually happening is the dog is getting outside and going, whoa, this is so much stimulation. I'm all over the place. And like you say, that's where the foot pattern goes wild and they're here, there, and everywhere, rather than just kind of taking their time, having a sniff, all of that kind of thing. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I suppose that's where kind of looking at the level below what you first see is really important, isn't it? So you see this behavior, barking, lunging, whatever it is, but what's happening underneath that behavior for that dog?
Right, right. We would like to catch the nervous system before it hits that big emotion. What does it look like if you want to score the reactivity? My dog barks and it's a 5. What does it look like at that 3, where it's starting to be hypervigilant or it's starting to keep constantly looking back at a stimuli, that chaotic foot pattern? So yes, being able to catch that dog and lead it away or whatever we need to do to support it before it actually blows. And yeah, when you think about a dog that's just sitting by their owner in an environment and not relaxed in their body, I I I have been in some of those situations where I was really stressed and didn't feel confident walking around. It's terrible. Anxiety is such a terrible feeling for our dogs. It really is. So I love that we're getting the message out that people can look for these signs.
Yeah, and thinking about walking, it makes me think of if I walk home late at night from the train station, it's midnight, it's dark. I'm hyper aware of my surroundings. Who's that on the other side of the road? Why is that car driving so slowly? Until I get my key in the house and I'm like, oh, I'm home. And that's vastly different to how I behave during the day. I don't think twice about going out and walking home. I'm like, I'm fine. So yeah, I think we can all think about something in our life that gives us that feeling of that kind of heart thumping anxiety and attribute that to how our dogs might be feeling.
Right. And then adding pressure on top of that. If I call you and say, Holly, I need you to describe something to me, and you're walking home, you're like, not right now, Judy. I'll call you later.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. That's a really good example. Yeah. Okay, so can we maybe think of some ways that we can really build connection with our dogs if we have noticed that they have that sensitivity or that real kind of keen awareness when it comes to the environment?
Yeah, I love to think of when I have a sensitive dog, and you probably do this too. You say your dog doesn't really need training, your dog needs support. And when we have a connection, it's really supportive. For example, back to your story, if you're walking from the train station, well, what if I got off at the same place as you did at the train station and I walked with you to go home? I would be a support person for you. I want people to know when their dog is feeling that anxious, whether it's in an activated or that passive fashion, that they think about being available for that dog. If your dog is hypervigilant at something and you go to it, We have to use positive reinforcement on sensitive dogs. We cannot be adding pressure to an already stressed out animal. That's just really unethical. B, we want to let that dog know that, hey, I'm here for you. And it may not be, for some dogs, it may not be able to say their name and prompt them with food. It may just be being near them. And when they look at us, then lighting up and be like, yes, I am here for you. I see you. Like, I really see you. And I understand what you're going through. How about we go over here and get out of this situation? And I do think when the dog knows that you're available, then that connection can start to develop. And if you don't know that your dog is sensitive, let's start looking at them more often. But again, we don't need to prompt them. We don't need to add pressure to them. Just wait for the dog to look up at you. And that's when you have that, yes, I see you. Come into my space. Let me be here for you. And that connection, as you know, can be physical touch. Not all dogs like physical touch. If they're sensitive, they may move their head away and say, no, thank you. But a lot of dogs like to come into their space, and we can train that. Come under cover, come around and be between my legs and let me support you and let me breathe with you and regulate my breathing so that I can help regulate your breathing as well. But I love to be available. I love to use management and not put a sound sensitive dog in a highly social setting, like a farmer's market or walking through town. We might just have to put that dog in a car and go somewhere where we can have some connection. And I think, as far as I know, people love to teach their dogs skills. And my dog knows how to do this and this and this. We all like our dog to know things. Let's teach those at home or in a place where your dog feels really safe. A dog is going to be able to connect with you much easier if it feels safe. So let's remember to not take them to a training center or a dog training class if we have a sensitive dog and try to teach any behaviors there. You can go and learn the behaviors, but let's teach those behaviors and those strong foundation skills in this, in the quietness of our home. And then if you go out to a quiet public setting, you can work on those foundation skills, but let's teach a familiar game in an unfamiliar environment. Let's not try to teach a dog something new in a place that he's never been in.
Yeah, that's so important, isn't it? Really important. And I really love what you said about when we are trying to kind of build that connection by letting them know that we're there for them, waiting for the dog to engage with you. Because I think sometimes when we see our dogs are struggling, we want to make it better, or either make them feel better or stop them from doing whatever it is they're doing that's undesirable, like whining or barking or whatever. And so we step in quickly. And I would imagine if I were a dog and I was stressed out and then maybe a bit touch sensitive, and suddenly my human kind of came in and was like, you're okay, that could possibly make things worse, right? That could heighten me in that situation. So that bit seems like especially important, really being patient and waiting for the dog to give you cues as to what they need from you.
Yes. And I love that you asked the dog, give the dog a choice. Like, I'm here for you. Some dogs are going to say thank you and they're going to come close to you, and that's important to them. Other dogs are going to look away from you and say, I need to watch this. I haven't resolved what I see over there. And they might even pull towards it. And you're like, okay, if you're somewhat calm, we can go resolve that. But I love that we give the dog a choice. And if it is something like there's a flag blowing 20 feet away, okay, let's go up and resolve what this is. And really asking our dog, what is it that's going to support you? And we know that the activated dog, right? The high energy dog is not the activated dog. Those are two different things. But a high energy dog that struggles to be still, it may be moving because it has a lot of energy, but we have to look at that again, that smooth structure or smooth stride versus that chaotic stride. But again, if that dog is an activated anxious dog, asking them to sit and wait or to down and stay is incredibly difficult. We want to use, for the activated dog, we want to use movement and say, okay, let's hustle away. It's so much easier to ask an activated dog to move versus to stay.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Movement is so important. I do know as well, though, that some people watching will say, I want to move my dog away, but my dog goes boom and sticks to the floor. Is there anything we can do in that situation for those sticky dogs?
Well, I'm a pretty patient person with my dog, and I love to observe behavior. So if I have a dog that goes down and is focused on something, especially if it's a visual focus. If they're not over threshold, turning around, spinning, biting the leash, really reacting, and they're somewhat looking at something, I'll say, okay, this is important to you. I'm going to wait here and I'm going to support you and allow you to figure this out. And if it's something going by, sometimes I had this happen the other day with a Springer. It was a baby stroller. And the dog was like, I have never seen a baby stroller before. What is that? And I said, just let him go. Let's just hang out. We were using exposure, not socialization. And I do believe that our sensitive dogs need a lot of exposure, not traditional socialization. And we just let him sort of resolve it. And the woman went up the street. And when she came back, he stared at it half the amount of time that he did the first time. So in that case, we allowed him to somewhat resolve it. So yes, I know people want to get them out of Dodge, but if the dog is lying down and I need to see this, I think if he's not freaking out, we should allow that because that's part of being exposure therapy.
Yeah, definitely. And how else do we learn about the world other than watching, listening, seeing what others do and kind of copying? I think that's how we learn, isn't it?
It
Yeah.
is so true. It is so true. I don't know if you know this, Holly. I spend the summers on a sailboat with my two German Shepherds.
Mhm.
So it's really important that my dogs could ride on a boat. And we spent weeks just on the dock, watching the water, watching the ducks, watching the boat. We just spent, I don't know, 10 or 12 times just going up and down the dock before we ever actually got on the boat. And then when we got on the boat, we would raise the sail and drop it, but no motor. So we had to break everything down into itty bitsy pieces so that I didn't go over threshold with the dogs because it was important to me, and slowing them down, it really paid off. And I think slowing any transition down for a sensitive dog, you might have I have clients that pull in and I'll say, just leave your dog in the car and just step out and let's just slow down this transition and let them be able to breathe and calm back down before we start this exposure or this training.
It's really interesting as you were saying that. It made me think again, another human example. Lots of people with ADHD, including myself, really struggle with transitions. So when I drive home and I park my car, I don't get out of the car for like 10 minutes. I get my phone, I'm scrolling Instagram, I'm thinking about things because there's something about that transition from where I've just been in the car for half an hour to the next part of my day that just feels difficult. So that coping mechanism is I just need a little bit of a kind of unwind, get ready to do the next bit. And I think that that is so important. It's exactly what you just said in terms of our dogs. We know what the next thing is because we're there. We're taking them there. They don't
Yeah.
necessarily know what the next thing is. They know that we're going to be driving it, right? So
Yes.
we have to appreciate that they're kind of reliant on us to say, here's the next thing in the sequence.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. And that's funny. We could probably go on lots of human examples about our ADHD.
Yeah, definitely. Many tangents, which would be very appropriate.
Some appropriate to share and some not.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess just lastly, it'd be helpful to think of maybe a few more ways that we should go about adjusting training or communication with our dogs if we know that we do have either a really highly sensitive dog or even just moderately sensitive dog, that in certain situations you notice that sensitivity go up. Is there anything we can do kind of from a training perspective or a communication perspective there?
I really like to use training based on the dog's preference. For example, if I'm working with my daughter Sheltie, I love it when she says, Mom, can you watch Ollie? He's a very difficult dog, reactive to humans and dogs, but he makes me practice what I preach. And he's both visual and auditory. So he steps outside the house and he has to just look around. So we step outside and we let him habituate. First, for him, it's about, am I safe? Am I good? Sometimes he'll start barking right away and I'll say, do you think we're okay? What are we looking at? And then he shakes off. He's like, I'm okay.
Yeah.
And because he's a Sheltie, because he's so visual, he loves quick movements. So for that dog, if I pull out not just a little ball, but if I pull out a long rope toy with a ball on the end, and I'm whipping that around and I'm backing up, and then I pick it up and he comes and sits fronts and I reward, I can get him to engage with me in a few different environments because I am using the quick motions, and that's what he loves. He loves he's a hypersensitive. He has to look at everything and check it out. But when I've learned to engage with him and teach my daughter this when she lives in Boston and I'm in Portland, Maine, which is quiet out here, when he comes to visit, he loves it. But being able to get him, because he's such a visual dog, and this would be good for the dog that hypervigilant with squirrels. You're walking them and they're constantly looking for a squirrel to move. Pull out that rope toy with a ball on the end and see if you can get that dog to engage with you. And first it's just about engagement, then it's about play. And then maybe, oh, can you come sit? Yes, what a good boy. Can you come around and sit? Yes, what a good boy. And see if you can use that fun engagement and slide into a little bit of skills and then reward with what is the preference. Another example would be my big male shepherd. When I got Drake, I was all set up to do obedience with him because that's what my friends were doing. Yeah, Drake thought obedience was really quite stupid. And he lived through his nose. I would ask him to do things, and yeah, he was always buying when I would ask him to do something. But he loved to use his nose. So I joined a tracking club. And now, certainly on the summers, when we're on the boat in many different towns on the coast of Maine, I have to be leash walking him all the time. So we will leash, and he knows to walk, and he's learned to walk, not trot, but actually walk. But he knows that I'm going to get somewhere, and I'm going to say, go smell. And he knows that he's going to be rewarded with scent. Oftentimes, we've learned to do fun tracking games where we'll go somewhere around a building or a field, and I'll have my husband, stay with the two dogs, and I'll have my husband walk around the building and hide. Drake puts his nose down and has the best time finding him because he gets to use his nose. So if we have a dog that loves to use their nose, sure, we can teach them to walk a little bit, but the reward should be what they love to do.
Oh, I love that example. That's so cute. He's like, where's he gone? Let me find
Yes.
him.
He gets so excited, and Drake loves dogs. And so with tracking and dogs, he is a missing dog tracker. So he loves to track lost dogs. But combining those two, he will choose to track a person and ignore the dogs that are on the side of the road. I've built up to his distractions at tracking at a cemetery, and there are lots of dogs walking, but boy, he wants to follow that track. So following the track was more important than saying hi to the dogs. And honestly, I wasn't sure that was going to be the case, but that's what training is asking our dog
Yeah.
do you like tracking that much? And he said, yes, I do. And I said, okay, oh, hold on, you go.
And that's the perfect example of finding that true reinforcer, isn't it? That really works, because there is no point in trying to reinforce the behavior with something the dog doesn't really care that much about. It's like, what's the point? Yeah.
It is, what's the point? And go to a dog show and you'll see dogs from the start. They take one step and their nose is on the ground instead of heeling. That dog would prefer to do nose work or tracking games as opposed to obedience. And yeah, let's make what they love to do the reward.
Definitely, yeah, because that kind of trying to shove a square peg into a round hole, you only get so far, and then I feel like both of you hit that wall of frustration then at some point, and that's the kind of thing, in my opinion, that damages that connection that you're trying so hard to build in the first place.
That's a good point. Do you think that if somebody says, "Oh, I'm so frustrated with my dog," I mean, often we have to think your dog's probably frustrated with you as well. It's probably both sides of the leash. And you're right. When we want to enhance our relationship with our dog, we definitely want to minimize that frustration, or eliminate it, I should say.
Yeah, and it kind of goes back to what you were saying right at the very beginning about stubbornness, right? And actually, are we being stubborn, or is the dog having, in this example, an understandable sensitivity to a lack of kind of compassion from that person? And I don't mean that in a harsh way. It's not the person deliberately trying not to be compassionate, but I think if I was forced to, for example, be an accountant, no offense to the accountants listening, just not my thing, like I would struggle with that, and I would probably feel resentment to the person that was asking me to do that, because that's not my passion. So yeah.
Yeah. And I love that you use human analogies. I mean, how many of us, I have 3 adult children, but how many of us that have children that are watching would say, oh, well, my son's a soccer player. Well, what if you went and said, I'm sorry, you can't play soccer anymore. You have to play chess or tennis. That's not going to go over too well. And that's very much what we are doing with our dogs.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, Judy, thank you so much. That was so interesting. So many real life examples and things that people can practice today, which is always really cool. Just
This has
before,
been fun talking to you. I appreciate it.
yeah, no, of course. Just before we go, can you tell us a little bit about your freebie that you have for everybody?
Yes, I did create a gift, and It's a well thought out gift, put a lot of time into this, and I wanted to be able to explain and give examples on the difference of what a dog looks like that's sensitive versus stubborn or persistent, and different ways that you can connect with that dog using some of the examples that we talked about. I've got several examples in there. I went into detail about if your dog is sensitive, environmental sensitivity. Well, we cannot socialize our dogs that are hypersensitive, that have this hyper awareness. We can't socialize them like a normal dog. We have to fall back on exposing them and maybe or maybe not building up to exposure or building up to socialization. But we want to start with exposing, see how they do. And that's a gradual process. So I do have a detailed page in there that's explaining, okay, if you have a sensitive dog, traditional socialization may not work. In fact, it may make your dog worse. And if you are socializing and your dog's getting worse, your dog's probably sensitive, and let's go back and start exposing them to different things. And that's some of the information in there. And then I put some misconceptions, like I've heard people say, if you take your dog out to potty, it's like, oh, well, if he has to pee, he'll actually pee. And we know that that's not true. And it can actually cause some urinary tract discomfort and infections. So having a page in there of misconceptions that maybe somebody says, "Uh-oh, I say that one," maybe that'll enlighten them a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. Because these things, the reason that people believe them is because they're spoken about incorrectly in so many places, right? That's the problem. So that's really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
When people go to follow you, see what you're doing, all of that kind of stuff.
Yes, definitely have my website, which is under my business name, Canine Behavior Counseling. But canine is spelled out Canine, Canine Behavior Counseling. I do have a Facebook page. I am having a lot of fun writing monthly blogs and sending out my newsletter. So if you want to follow my work, you can sign up for my newsletter on my website. I have enjoyed making YouTube videos on dog to dog conversations and how to socialize dogs appropriately, which is what my book is going to be about coming out next year, is about how to socialize a sensitive dog based on genetics. So based on your dog's genetics and what they prefer and they like, how should we really be introducing dogs to other dogs to prevent big emotions?
Yeah, brilliant. We'll put the links to everything below this video, and very exciting about the book coming out soon. That's very exciting.
It's very fun, very fun.
Brilliant. Well, thank you again so much for joining me. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me. I enjoyed it as well.